Greetings, and welcome to the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. In each episode, host Kirill Tokarev invites video game industry leaders to talk about the world of game development. No topic is off limits as long as it relates to video game development. New episodes are in the works, so remember to follow us or subscribe and share with someone you know will also enjoy the podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. So today with us we have Yuliya from MY.GAMES. MY.GAMES, right? It's MY.GAMES now. So Yuliya, can you do like a little intro? Tell us about what you do, where do you work, and what projects are you working on right now?
Okay. Currently, I'm an art director at the project Blast Brigade, and my main job is to make sure the game looks nice and it works from the visual point. So my job is to determine how does it look, so create a whole visual style for the project and make sure all my colleagues and all the other artists will follow all the guidelines, and the game will look consistent in style and its presentation. So we started production of Blast Brigade about a year and a half, and we didn't have proper pre-production. So we didn't have a lot of time to experiment and search for some unique style or something. So most of our style is based on our previous project, which was Bombastic Brothers. It's mobile game, like platformer, run and gun shooter, and we took most of the content and reimagined it as a game for PC and consoles. So when we started working on that, we were all excited to make a project which was not a mobile game. We've been working on mobile games for a while. For me, it was like about 2 or 3 years. So all of our team was very excited to make a PC and console project finally. And we had a task. So, okay, we don't have a lot of time. So everything was that was good in the Bombastic Brigade, Bombastic Brothers. I always mess up these titles because they are very alike, and also both projects are alike in a lot of ways because they have the same characters and a lot of how can I say that? Okay, never mind. So first thing was to take everything that was good about Bombastic Brothers and make it better. So we began with at first, we had a task to make a presentation for Apple Arcade. It was our initial plan, but it kind of fell apart for different reasons, and that stuff with Apple Arcade wasn't very suitable for us. So we, from that point, we had a presentation, and we reiterated that and made a little more research on the style and tried to implement some ideas that were very pleasant for us. For me, for example, for me, the main point of the graphics of Blast Brigade was to make the game look more like a cartoon. Of course, there are projects that really look like a cartoon. For example, Cuphead. That was just really exceptional project for in the terms of art. But of course, we couldn't afford to make everything look this polished in 2D graphics with hand-drawn 2D animations. It's too much expensive. So we took what we had and what we can do, and we used spine animations. We used 2D graphics for backgrounds and some other things we can do. And now we have what we have. Of course, it could have been better, but I think for this limited time, what we've done it's pretty good.
Yulia, thank you so much for the introduction. I think it was a lot of information.
Yeah, I got carried away.
Yeah, no worries. I have a question about basically what we have on the podcast and on the website. We have a lot of people who are kind of starting their journey in video games, and especially starting their journey in building art. So when they look at when they will listen to this recording and they will go to your profile on like Instagram on our ArtStation, they will be like, "Oh, she's so good, I will never be as good," and they will feel like inferior, right, and so on. I think it would be cool if you could maybe take a couple of minutes to explain how you got to this position of an art director, because you weren't always an art director, right? So
Of course.
you started somewhere. So can you talk a little bit about this? Maybe a little bit about your career and this education that kind of helped you develop, become better, and gradually kind of get into the position where you are right now.
Well, of course, now I'm an art director, but this is my first project in this position, so it's kind of my debut. And I'm very concerned about number of things. I always compare myself to art directors that I know in the web who lead all these cool projects, or art director I worked with on my previous projects. And on my way on this project, I made a lot of mistakes, and I think I could have done better a lot of things and be better at directing, at leading people, at making art, and etc., etc. So it's not an easy task for me, and there's still a lot of room to grow. And how I get there? How did I get there? Well, do you want to hear the story from the very beginning or just the career part?
I think how you got into drawing and whether you went into an actual art school. So did you go like professionally in the art school, or did you kind of drew yourself and then are you self-taught mostly? Because I see a lot of like anime influences, and I'm wondering, when did you actually start to draw, and how did it kind of develop into a professional career? Because I was watching anime myself, and I was also doing, I was pausing the VCR, and I was trying to imitate whatever there was on the screen at that time. And I had a bunch of
I feel
drawings
you.
and all. Yeah, but it never actually developed with me into a professional career, right? So although I am kind of like connected with arts and games, but it's not something that I actually do, right? So with you, it's different. So it's very interesting to learn whether maybe you went to like college and you studied there like anatomy and all that stuff, or maybe you just kind of bought some books and took it yourself, or maybe you hired the teacher. It's very interesting for people to kind of learn how this goes, for them to understand that what is the next step that I can take that can take
Well,
me there.
For me, that was a bit of everything. But I was, well, right from my first years of consciousness, I just was sure I want to be an artist. I don't really know when did I get this thought, but like from 3 years old or whatever, because my mom was a student at the architecture academy when I was little, and I saw her works she brought home, and what did she do, what did she teach me, and so I decided I want to be like her. And I drew a lot as a kid. I tried to learn something, but it never went well, because when I was a toddler and I wanted to draw a realistic cat, for example, I didn't knew how, and nobody could teach me actually. And when I went to school, I instantly went to an art circle. Then I went to university, the same as my mother, because that was my dream for long years.
You went to an architectural school, right?
Yes, but I didn't learn architecture. Actually, then the question of my specialization came. I didn't know what to choose, because I was already introduced to anime, and anime wasn't an option in any way at that time. It was just some weird hobby. Nobody knew that several years after you can build a career drawing anime. So I just picked some specialization because I don't know. I asked myself, "What do you like to do?" Okay, I like to decorate my room. Okay, so interior designing will be fine, I guess. So I went there,
That's funny.
and yeah, and I spent there about 4 or 5 years, and then I dropped out because the influence of anime and games was so strong, and I realized this specialization is not what I want to do with my life, and I dropped out. Of course, I had a huge argument with my mother, but she accepted it after a year or so, and I was fine.
Is your mama, is she okay right now that you're working in games? Is she
Oh, of
happy
course.
with where you got? That's
Yeah,
funny.
she's just wanted to make sure I have a diploma, because nobody knew that in several years it won't be necessary, and artist is it's important to have skills, not education, and you can educate yourself. So she just wanted me to have a stable job, and etc. etc. It's like many parents, of course.
So I have kind of like an additional question. So how did you start? Like, so you finished school or you dropped out, and then you started kind of this artistic journey. How were you developing your style? And I can put another question on that question. So maybe it's going to be easier to kind of understand. So for a while, when we were thinking about games made in the former Soviet Union, there was a certain type of aesthetics there, right? I mean, you could look at any mobile game in the beginning of the, when this whole thing blew up, like in the on social media or somewhere else, and you can kind of understand that it was Russian, Ukrainian, or made in Belarus, right? Because just the overall, even especially the cartoony look, the stylized look, it kind of looked very similar, and you could definitely notice that there was a lot of Western influences missing from that style. Now, as we look at games coming from Russia right now, they look much more I guess, international, ready for a broader market. Something that they look like something that could appeal to a wider audience in terms of style and in terms of gameplay and all the other elements. But we're talking more about style right here. And I'm wondering if you could have a look like at the stuff that you've been going through and figure out how did it help you develop the style, and then we'll compare it to kind of how the whole industry kind of developed. You know what I mean?
I think I understand. So my style, of course, there was a lot of anime influence, especially in my first years of drawing consciously, if I can put it so. Uh, well, until I got into university, or maybe until I was 17, 18, I was just drawing stuff. I didn't put much thought in it. But when I was introduced to anime and I tried to recreate what I saw, I realized I can't do that and I don't know how to teach myself. So I tried to copy it and I copied and I copied. And finally, I had some clue and developed some my first skills and some first something that could possibly be considered a style, but that wasn't very great. And after that, I got a goal. I want to draw better, and I want to communicate with my art, or at least to be able to put things that are in my head to the paper. And I was learning from anime, I was learning from other artists I admired, and a lot of other things like tutorials and etc. And year by year, it developed, and also I got into gaming, and I got, and yes, when I was 19, I realized that you can not only play games, but you also can make them. And that was a big realization for me, because I never considered that idea before. It was then, a Lot's team, or it was Nival at the moment, I can't remember really. And they made a contest for their upcoming project. It was, if I remember correctly, it was Prime World, but it wasn't announced yet. So they made an art contest, and I realized I want to participate. And first prize included not only money, but also a job offer. That was huge for me. I really thought that I can win this, but then I submitted my work, and then I looked at the other submissions. I realized how big was that gap between me and people who got first places after that. And it made me think that I need to improve even more. And also, not only that, but work on my style and be more flexible with it, because there wasn't anime games still, at least on the our market in Russia. And I need to try and learn something more Western, or at least something more like the games I play. For example, League of Legends got big at the time, or no. In 2019, it just released, but gradually it became a huge hit in just a couple of years, and that was second reason I got into games, because Riot at the moment was rapidly developing and etc. And they also had an art contest which I participated in, and this time I put a lot more effort in my submission, but I still got no recognition at all. And of course, I was devastated at that fact, because I thought I could, I don't know, win at least the last prize or something. Like, I believed it myself so much at the time. And I saw how people who just drew good enough fan art got into the riot, and I was so jealous, but also so inspired by that. So you can make a fan art, and they will offer you a job. Wow! So
Yeah, I think they
yeah,
still do this. They still do this, right?
maybe. I don't know. I think there's a lot of competitions
Yuda, I
between
think you
people.
touched on like a very interesting point here, and I'm kind of speaking from experience because I also work with a lot of artists when we're for commissions and all that stuff and so on. And you mentioned that you have to be flexible. I think this is super important. Like, and you need to keep it in mind, right? So, when I work with artists or any creatives, um, when I first started, I always thought that, well, I'm just gonna tell them what I need, right? And they're gonna draw it, and it's gonna look exactly like I envisioned it in my head. And I will give them like references. I will give them like photos or whatever, but make sure that it's exactly as I told you to do, right? But when I started getting results, I quickly understood that it's a utopia. Will never happen because every every single sketch that I got, it was completely different, and it looked like nothing. Even like the works in the artist's portfolio, it looked different. So then I try to do another I try to do another approach. I'm more flexible. I can choose like from any artist I like who's doing like freelance or whatever. And then I just started looking for artists who fit my vision like 100% or like 90%, right? So I was just looking for people who were like doing exactly what I needed. So if I needed like a fantasy picture, then I found like a guy who did very good fantasy. If I needed like a hard surface, like sci-fi gun or something, then I know guys who are doing like very good weapons and stuff. So it became kind of easier. But you are an art director, right? And you're working on a video game title. So your job basically is to develop this vision and then make sure that everyone in the creative team are working kind of inside this one vision. I'm very
Yes.
interested to learn, how do you actually do this? How do you make sure that they are aligned, that everybody has the same understanding, and that their works, they don't kind of like fall out of the usual style, right? You know what I mean? Like when everything kind of fits together and you don't get like 10 different characters from different worlds. Instead, you have like characters who live in the same space, who look kind of similar, and you kind of understand that they are part of one game, right? And they're not like all over the place. So what are the
Yes.
ways that you can kind of guide the team and make sure that they're kind of following you into this world?
Well, first of all, your team should be on the same page as you. I understand that you can't find people who are just who draw exactly like you. Of course, there are a lot of copycats on ArtStation and etc.
Yeah.
But that's not the case if you're developing a project from scratch and from your head, especially. So you, first of all, you have to find a team of people who understand the same principle and who apply those principles to their art. For example, in our case, when we were searching for artists, we didn't hope to find people who will draw exactly what we need, but we found a lot of people who draw in the same kind of style or in the same kind of mood, or they just use I don't know, they just have the same kind of line art that we have, for example, just these basics that on that basics on what our style is built, like that. It's actually it's hard to determine which of our, I don't know, presumptions will work, and we try to work with several artists that well, we hired some people, and working with them proved that we were wrong. Unfortunately, we saw their portfolios. We how does
No. I kind of understand what you mean. So basically, you thought that they would work for this particular style or whatever, but when you started working, it appeared that it's a completely different direction, and you just didn't want to go with it. I think it's fine. You made a very interesting point there when you said that you have to make sure that everybody's aligned and on the same page, and you're using these sort of like aesthetical bricks to build the base for your project, right? So you kind of understand that this is like as an example, like you use like a very fat dark line around the character, for example, right? And then you use a certain palette of colors for the characters and for the environment, for the characters to stand out, for example, on the environment or something. And
just like that.
While you were adding these kind of, because if you read any books on like creativity or anything, they usually say that the creativity usually comes from restrictions. So you impose a certain amount of restrictions upon yourself, and then you will start to see the creative juices flowing and so on. So I think with kind of art direction, it's a little bit similar, right? Because you kind of restrict them in a way, and then suddenly they start bringing up something interesting and something that you could use in a game.
Yeah, that's true. You have to make a number of rules that everybody should follow, and if they follow the rules right, the picture will be okay.
Yuda, I have another question. So, since this job that you're currently doing at the project, you're not only drawing, right? You're not only doing sketches and paintings and stuff, but you're also managing.
To be honest, I spent less and less time drawing.
Yeah. So I think, and we had this kind of recurring question on a lot of our podcasts and our conversations. How do you manage artists? For companies, I think it's sort of a challenge because it's very hard to kind of understand even how to manage creatives in your workspace, right? So what is your approach? How do you do this?
Well, I don't do this. We have an art manager to help me managing people, and that was a challenge for him too, because he was an artist just like me, and he got very impressive managing skills for an artist. And he just took this job to get an experience and to get better at the managing part, so he could be an art director himself one day. And watching him doing his job, I can say that he got all that he needs to become an art director. But before that, I was managing when I was not an art director, but just leading artist. And I have all these sheets with and guns and all this stuff to manage people and their tasks and all the estimates and whatever. And that was hard at the start, but I got used to it in, I don't know, a couple of months. But that was when we were still working on Bombastic Brothers, and it was a lot easier than current project because it was it wasn't on development, it was already in release, and we just making updates every several months or so. So it was just on the rails and was kind of easy and predictable when I got used to it. But when we started Blast Brigade, and it was whole new project with a lot of things I don't know how to plan or what should I do with all of this. I have no idea how much time this will take. I didn't know how to make this and all of that. So after some time managing, me and my boss, how do you say, project manager? Yeah, and we discussed this topic. So I was drowning in this management thing, basically, and I asked for help. And my colleague, he just took it on himself and became a manager. And I have to say a big thank you to him.
Overall, like, how many people do you actually need right now in terms of creative force to kind of create a game? Do you need like a large team, or can you do like with a smaller team?
We could have done it with a smaller team if we had like twice more time, but we don't have that. So our core team is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 people in art, including animation and etc. And also we work with a lot of outsource, and there are about 7 or 8 artists and about the same amount of technical artists. And that's about that. That's a lot of people, actually.
So,
but
do you work with outsourcing companies, or do you just work with like freelancers? And
with freelancers, we tried working with outsourcing companies, and that wasn't very much pleasant experience, to be honest. So
why? Because wasting a lot of time on the or what?
Yes, and it's just hard to communicate with people through all these layers of management. And also for example, we had a studio, and they had their management and their team, and we give them our tasks, and they learn something, they get better, and then they switch artists, and the next task is like the same quality as their first work, and we're like, what?
I see. So basically, they switch the artists who you kind of worked with, and it just makes more sense to have direct contact with the artist, so you can hire whoever you like and develop this relationship and know exactly what you're gonna get in the end. It makes sense. So as for the tasks, what are the tasks that you like to do in-house, and what are the tasks that you can outsource?
Well, my favorite task as an art director is just giving feedbacks. I don't know, I just feel this strange satisfaction of making little things better with a couple of strokes and explaining people things I understand. And through explaining, I understand it better myself. And there's a lot of satisfaction in this kind of job. I also like just big tasks like draw a whole, I don't know, big boss or location or whatever. But I don't have I didn't have a chance to do a lot of these because they require concentration and a lot of time, and I don't have that because half of my day I have to give feedbacks and answer questions and be on meetings or whatever. Whatever. Yeah. And what was the second question?
What are the tasks that you would give to an outsourcer?
Yeah.
Like in the project of your kind of scope, like what are the things you don't really want to, not you like personally, but like the team as a whole, like what do you want to kind of outsource and give to somebody else?
Well, we don't give to outsource a lot of tasks like that we don't want to do because they are boring or something. We give them proper tasks because we have a lot of content to cover, and we won't be able to do all of that in house. Of course, there are a lot of things that are not very much interesting, and not of all of that tasks are something that our outsourcers are able to do because. For example, we have this kind of work like our outsourcers, they don't always do the art like in this quality that we need, and we have to make sure it to finish it before we can put it in the game. And finishing content after outsourcers is this kind of work that nobody really wants to do, but it has to be done.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. So you get a bunch of stuff and it doesn't fit, and you already paid for it, and you're like, oh my God, I have to redo this. So,
Of course, you can spend more time reiterating it and giving more and more feedback, but there is a point.
Time, right?
It takes time, and there is a point when you just it would be faster and easier to do it yourself. But it's like the last thing you should do, because if you work with outsource, you should make sure they learn something from your feedbacks. So I have several stages of feedback. Well, first one is to explain what is wrong and what artists can do to improve that. Second one, explaining in more details. For example, like point on certain part of this sketch and explain what is wrong and what can you do in details to make sure it's okay. And the third stage is the last one, is to make an overpaint and to show it with your own hands how to do that. And that's that.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, we follow the same process kind of here, like the overpaints, the sketches, and the lighting, and so on. So I have another question, maybe like the last one, because we're kind of nearing the end of the
Oh,
meeting. Um, what were like the when you're building art for games in particular? What are the main things that you need to take into consideration? Like, what are the, let's say, 3, 5, or like 2 or 1 main things that you need to have there in order for it to work? Do you know what I mean?
That's a very broad question.
I'm gonna give you like an example. So, if you look at the game as Overwatch, for example, I'm sorry for mentioning somebody else's game, but it's just as an as an example, right? There are elements there that kind of make it work. So, for example, in Overwatch, you have characters who are very much influenced by Disney style and animation, right? So they are very lively. They are moving a lot. They look kind of cute. Everyone, even like the very naughty one and the evil ones. Then you have a certain number of colors that work together. Then you have some influences that help create this world. So, for example, all the locations that they are making, they are being created by artists who are not from the area that they are creating. So, for example, there is a Hollywood level in Overwatch, and to build that level, they actually asked an artist, like a freelancer from Brazil or somewhere around, not from Irvine, right? Because they know that Hollywood in reality looks kind of shitty. It's like it's not really great, right? So there's like bombs everywhere, and it's dirty, and there's a lot of tourists, and it's not glamorous, right? It's just like not interesting, and that doesn't really fit into their style, right? So they asked another guy to kind of build this one. And there are like a lot of other things like animations, like how many shots in every animation should there be, that there should be like mascots, like somebody following you around and doing like this different kinds of animations coming from. And they it kind of goes and develops further into the strategy. So they hire a lot of people from animation studios and so on and so forth. So in your experience, like what do you think are like the main kind of key decisions that you need to make about art, or um, the key things that kind of make it work inside, right?
Well, unfortunately, I can't say like all the things I understand about this topic, because when I see it, I see it, I understand it, I understand how it works, and I see all the tiny little details that make the project on this level. But when I try to explain it myself, I really can't for now, because I'm still learning to explain things and to explain things that I understand on some gut feeling, and I can draw something similar or communicate the idea, or I don't know, give some feedback for art to improve towards this goal of attractability. I don't know, but I can't. How do you say?
No, I mean, I understand what you mean. I mean, like you basically it's unexplainable, right? So it either
No,
works or
I
it
believe
doesn't
it's
work.
explainable. I just haven't got it yet.
I got it. Okay. Well,
But
I think we kind of need to wrap it up. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was a wonderful conversation. I would love to spend like another hour talking about all the intricacies of art direction in games. I think it's such a nice, broad topic. But yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I hope your game succeeds and everything's going to be on time, which is also very important. So we will leave the links in the description for everything, so you can go and check it out. And if you want to communicate, I will leave the links to your LinkedIn so everybody could.
Please, no LinkedIn, use ArtStation or.
Okay. The ArtStation. No worries. You. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope all this information was useful to somebody, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.